Welcome. Thank you for joining us on our call. While we're waiting for the last few people to trickle in today, just a big thank you for joining us and hello. My name is Gitanjali. I'm an instructional designer working with Compass Education. I'm thrilled to see so many of you on the call. While we're waiting for the last few people to trickle in, since we're a little bit of a bigger group, I wanted to start with a wave if activity to see who we have with us today. So if you have your camera on, you're going to wave if something I say is true for you. If you have your camera off, you can use one of the reactions on Zoom just to indicate that the statement's true for you. So wave if you are an educator. Wave if you work in secondary school. Wave if you work with primary learners. Awesome. Wave if you advise some sort of student club or committee. All right. Wave if you currently work with sustainability in your classroom. Okay. And then wave if you have previously taken a workshop or a training with Compass Education of some sort. All right. Well, for all of you, welcome. It's lovely to have you here. And I am very excited today to share with you my screen and highlight our wonderful featured educator for today, who's going to be sharing a story with us, Mike Johnston. Mike is going to be speaking with us today about student leadership for a better world. And to help introduce everything, you should be able to see my slide here summarizing what we're going to be talking about, student leadership towards a better world. And I'd like to give you a brief 30-second intro to Compass Education just to help contextualize the conversation for those of you who are new or who maybe haven't had a chance to look through the articles or video I sent in that email. So Compass Education is a global movement of educators working to build a more sustainable world through education. We work to equip teachers and students and learning communities with tools, knowledge, and skills to create a more sustainable world, to educate and act for that sustainable future. We think sustainability can be achieved in a systemic way, and a very brief summary of what we'll talk more about and you can learn more about later is our wonderful tool, the Sustainability Compass, which helps frame that. We think to create a more sustainable world, we want to create systems that live within the Earth's physical and biological limits, that regenerate our ecosystems. We also need to have low carbon, innovative, and inclusive economies for everyone, a society that supports social cohesion, equity, and engagement for all people, and we want to consider individual opportunity, health, fulfillment, and well-being. So as we continue today, I want you to think about that in the back of your mind, but for the most part, just chat. And we're going to start off with some inspiration and ideas from our featured educator, Mike Johnston. Mike is currently an assistant head of school at Frankfurt International School in Europe, but he is a school leader who's been passionately working on youth leadership and sustainability for as long as I've known him, which I think is almost a decade now. So it's very exciting to have Mike with us here today. And I'm going to hand it over to Mike to help kick off our conversation. Mike, over to you.
Right, thank you. Give me a quick thumbs up if you can hear me okay. All right, we're good. So nice to see some familiar faces from across the world. I see some people that I was in touch with in Guatemala and others in Asia and others I've worked with for many years, and some new colleagues here from FIS who have been an amazing part actually of this student leadership program that we're launching here that I'm going to talk about. So it's nice to have that mix. I just want to let you know that in my own personal journey for understanding sustainability and really getting students to take meaningful action to make a better world, I have to admit and do a little confession that long ago, probably 17, 18 years ago, I was the environmental teacher battering ram. I could really kind of influence people that the world was dying and we should do something about it. And hey, we should do this and push and do the kind of things that, here, look at this shocking story. We should do something about this kind of approaches. And I had a major epiphany in my career and life when I started digging into systemic thinking and systemic actions. And that's when Compass Education came into my life. Alan Atkinson came into my life. I went to a masterclass with Alan Atkinson and Axel Kilmick, who actually they co-facilitated. It was a 5-day immersion in Bangkok. And this very small world, Axel actually lives 20 minutes from me here in Germany. And I've stayed in touch with Alan, and it's been transformational for me in my life. And when I wrote my PhD, one of the things that I kept saying over and over again was, we are doing a disservice to young people if we do not introduce them to complexity thinking, systems visualization, and a way to actually understand their complex world. If we don't do that for them, we're not doing our job. And so that's just to give you a context of where I'm coming from. I just started a new job during a pandemic. Talk about a crazy transition. Moving from a sabbatical year into an assistant head role at a school with 1,900 students and 2 campuses and lots of different moving parts and different things going on. It's been an amazing 6 months. Sometimes it feels like it's been 9 years, but it's been 6 months. And I've really enjoyed working with the people here because I see such amazing potential to build on the things that already happen and take steps for what's next. So today I just want to do a little input, but I want to talk with this group, and I want you to ask questions anytime you'd like to, because the theme of today is really, this is the theme. Does anybody know what that is? What have we got there? Chime in if you like.
A chameleon?
That's a chameleon.
Yes.
So I want to talk about the sustainability chameleon. Because one thing that I've realized in my research and running workshops and that kind of thing is sustainability, unfortunately, can be a troubled word. And so my story today has to do with the sustainability chameleon and how you deal with being the chameleon to get the kinds of outcomes that matter for kids. Because you'll notice the subject of our talk today is student leadership. So what does that have to do with sustainability and systems? Well, and I'll let you in on a little secret, it has everything to do with sustainability and systems. And in working with Compass Education, I've been lucky enough to both run courses and take courses, and I facilitate, and I gotta say it's one of the most impactful PDs I've ever run and been a part of in many ways, whether it's a level 1 or working with students, or a level 2 or full immersions with schools and self-assessments on a whole school level, whatever it might be. So I want to tell you the story of the sustainability chameleon here at FIS. So at FIS, we have a long history of amazing student engagement in all kinds of different things, whether it be student council or the athletic council or performing arts or service clubs or whatever it might be. And one thing that I struggle with is people who believe that all those things are different things. To me, they are the same things. And what are they all trying to do? What's in common across the board? They are all trying to create a sustainable future. Whether it's a local impact micro or whether it's a macro global impact, they're all trying to do the same things. But people don't perceive it that way. Because unfortunately, when you look at the foundational tool for Compass Education, the compass itself, sustainability has been kidnapped. It's been kidnapped by, mostly by compliance and the keen greeners. And I was one of those keen greeners. So I get it. I lived it. There's no such thing as a keen greener who, if they really want to achieve their goals of environmental sustainability, they best consider economy, society, well-being, and nature at the same time. And so I use this example of these are 11-year-olds who are digging into an example in Singapore, and they took to it immediately. All they needed was the catalyst to say, let's broaden our thinking. And I was actually in a class this week, a grade 5, as they embark on their PYP, and Carissa's here. Hi, Carissa. I was in your class this week, and we were talking parachuting cats and compasses. And it was amazing to see how quickly they pick up this complexity. And so for student leadership, what's been fascinating is we in the student leadership program, and did anybody get a chance to read the blog on student leadership? Student leadership, it's a journey. If you had a chance to read it, the first question I'll ask you is, how many times in that blog and in the months that we've been taking this journey, I just want you to put your hand up and show me a number. How many times have we mentioned the word sustainability? Did you get a chance to read it? How many times? I can help you with the easy answer. The answer is this: 0. We haven't used the word sustainability once. But here's a secret. It is sustainability. But people get mixed up with sustainability and environmental sustainability. If people think that when you think about nature, you shouldn't think about economy, and they are competing against each other, herein lies the problem with those mental models in this world. We have a duty as educators to break and expose those mental models, to know that satisfying the needs in nature, satisfying the economic needs, the societal needs, and our own well-being and flourishing in this world can happen all at the same time. They do not have to be in competition. Do not believe what you read and what you see about this. That plays to the favor of people who it benefits them to have these things in competition. Our students don't think that way. Most humans don't think that way once you give them the opportunity to do so. So in this leadership program, leaders consider all systems conditions together. That's why I love the Compass tool, because it considers the 4 systems conditions, but even within those 4 systems conditions, there are so many other systems conditions embedded within those. And then I love this: leaders look from the balcony and they get on the dance floor. So when we talk about leadership at our school, we're talking to all these student leaders who are already student leaders or would be student leaders, and we're having these conversations with them about what is a student leader. There was a very cool pivot this week where one of the project groups that you'll read about for student leadership is putting on a Changemaker 2022 conference. By the way, you're all invited to attend, and also to attend with your students. March 2022, Changemaker FIS. So what's cool, what happened this week in the student leadership is they took a pivot in one of the project groups where they said, you know what? We shouldn't call this student leadership. We should call this Changemakers. We are Changemakers. And it's interesting because Lawrence, who did the webinar last week, mentioned the Changemakers in Abu Dhabi. They've gotten together now multiple schools. So we're going to link with them. And there's schools in Asia. And there's this movement of student change makers. So, one of the questions to this group is, well, how do you make a change maker? Because we're calling our student leadership. It's now morphing into FIS change makers. And the ultimate questions that you read about on the blog are, what's a change maker? How can you be a change maker? And so as we move forward, that's what we're looking at. It links to, this is just another tool in your toolbox, the iceberg. And if you didn't get a chance to watch the recording from last week with the grade 10 student talking about the use of the iceberg from ASD Dubai, take a look. Once people start to use common languages and frameworks, anything is possible. So as we use, people always ask me, like, Mike, you've worked with this kind of stuff for so many years. What are your 2 favorite tools, both thinking and application? I said, hands down, Compass, iceberg. And then they ask me, the next question is always, when do you use them? And the response is, when I need to. And oftentimes what I will do is I'll share the story with student leadership. And we've already talked about the idea of a plumber, because a plumber comes to your house and assesses the problem. They've got a whole bunch of tools in the truck. Which tool do they bring? It depends what the problem is. But unfortunately, when we tackle issues in this world, and especially in some traditional education frameworks, we always use the same tool. We try and cram the same tool into the same situation. And unfortunately, if your only tool is a hammer, everything starts to look like a nail. So in student leadership, what are we trying to do at FIS? Well, here's what leaders are. Leaders have skills. They are able to what? Collaborate, communicate. You know, you can get more specific under those bigger buckets, use the IB profile, whatever it may be. Leaders understand things. They understand concepts. I understand that, ... And I would suggest if you want to start with one concept that is super, super important, start with the concept of sustainability. If your group or your class or your individual, whatever you're working with, a club or your whole school, start with understanding the concept of sustainability. And how can you do that? Use the compass. The compass is coming. Student leaders don't know it yet, but it's coming. And it's going to help them understand the concept of complexity and multiple systems conditions. And they're both going to be able to tackle whatever it is they're doing with the tool better and conceptually understand the idea of complexity and sustainability. Dual purpose. Character traits. You know, we're building character traits. Leaders are resilient. Leaders are self-reflective. So the way that we've tried to frame it here at FIS is, okay, what skills to be a change maker? What concepts do you need to understand to be a change maker? What character traits do you want to foster? What process will you follow if you want to make change? And what's in your toolbox to do so? What should you throw in your toolbox first? I say the compass and iceberg. That's always the place that I start people at, and then we go from there. So this is the framework at FIS. What concepts do I need to dig into more? What process will you use? Now, when you use a process, what process should you use? It doesn't matter. Use a robust process that doesn't leave any steps out. Because if you don't leave the steps out, you're not going to run into your unintended consequences when you just do stuff. Like the great chat last week about the beach cleanup. You can go clean that beach up every week and the garbage is back the next week. You are now just mediating events on the level of the iceberg. And that's okay. We need to do those things sometimes, even to get things off the ground for student action and advocacy. But it's not a long-term systemic solution. Because if you want a long-term systemic solution, you best be working on the systems at play and the mental models of how people think about these things. But that takes longer and it's harder work. So what process you use, I don't know, just pick one as an organization. Of course, I recommend when you read my blog on complexity to action, I use the pyramid. Pyramid comes from Alan Atkinson. I like it. It's simple to follow. And so I'll use that as the example today. And then what's in the toolbox? There can be all kinds of things in the toolbox. So here's what I'm going to do. I am going to give you access to this in a moment. And I just show you an example for student leadership at FIS. We haven't adopted a process to take on complexity or challenges or anything. Some people are tinkering around with processes. There were processes that existed before. There's a design process, there's innovation processes, there's STEM, STEAM, CAS, projects, PYP, exhibition, service learning groups, environmental clubs, etc., 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 etc. What's our job as a student leadership, now called Changemakers? We're going to pull all those things together. And we're going to pull all those things together, speak a common language, build a toolbox together, and become deliberate, specific change makers for whatever it is that we want to change. So what I thought we'd do, I'm going to stop the share for a moment and allow anybody to ask anything that they need. And there's the Jamboard, if you want to jump on there. Anybody wondering anything? Does this make sense or am I sounding crazy? The Sustainability Chameleon. What are you wondering? That's pretty much a summary of my research over 16 years in 12 minutes.
I think, Mike, I have a question for you on what has been some of the most notable things your students at FIS have said about characteristics or traits that are important for them to have to be change makers?
So we're in launch phase, and it's been fascinating to watch to see how they talk about it. It's a great question because they, project team number 1, their job is to create a common framework and language for change makers. And they're asking that question. They're like, okay, well, what character traits do amazing change makers have? They've brought up resilience, like they don't quit, right? And they just keep going. They've brought up the character trait of care. They care. They care about other people. They care about animals. They care about the world. And actually, when they brought up the idea of care, one of them who was already exposed to the compass got the compass out and say, it's care for these systems conditions. It was great to see them make those connections. Yeah, good question. Yeah, we're just building that, and we're going to share it on that blog. You notice I did an update this morning on the blog. Yeah, Nicole, I like that question. It's not a wonder, but a notice. I realize that sustainability is not just environmental ideology. All things worth doing need to be sustainable. Exactly. That's the concept that we're really driving towards. And what I use a lot of the time is I use visuals of sustainability that help people understand that it's multiple things. It's not just environment. We actually have a sustainability council here at FIS. I met with them the first time. It was on COVID pause. We have a COVID pause, as everybody else does, of things that we wish we had got done, but we just got so many things just surviving. The Sustainability Council is now asking these questions about how the Sustainability Council would be the overarching, and then the groups of leadership would fit into based on the system's conditions. It's exciting. But you're right, Nicole, unless people actually have that conversation and dig in to actually know that sustainability is super complex and interconnected, but not overwhelming. It's super accessible. That's why I love the compass. It makes it accessible, makes it easy. All right, I'm going to go back to the share really quickly here. And as you go here, feel free. Remember, we talked about a process, a toolbox, conceptual understanding, skills, and character traits. I just threw a bunch of, I used the wrong tool. I threw a bunch of tools around here. I threw the iceberg, I threw systems mapping, I threw the ladder of inference, change planning, Everett Rogers, the Amoeba of change, the compass, the Gilman equation. And if you haven't done compass training, you're looking at these going, what? And if you have done compass training, you're like, oh, I recognize those tools. Those tools are in my toolbox. I'm happy for anybody to go ahead because you have access to this. Grab a tool and move it to where you think it should be in the process and tell us why. So I'll move them out of the way a little bit, but where should it be in the process? The process is we're going to figure out what's happening. We're going to figure out why it's happening. What can we do about it? How are we going to do it? Unfortunately, a lot of people leave these steps out, right? They just jump to these. They're like, hey, what can we do about this problem? All right, somebody has grabbed the iceberg. Tell us why. Where'd you move it and why'd you move it there?
Okay, I moved it to what is happening because when you assess a situation, there's often a lot more than what you can see on the surface going on. So when you assess what is happening, and probably also the iceberg can help with why it's happening.
You've hit on a super important point, Lori. These tools can go in multiple places. People's linear brains don't like that, but we're systemic thinkers, right? So we're okay with that mess.
Yeah.
You could use it for multiple things, right? I look at your students, Lori, that are tackling the issues and taking the action that they are. Are they working on systemic structures? Are they working on mental models? What are they actually trying to change?
They are doing these things, but I don't think the connection has been made for them yet, that this is what they're doing. So I'm really excited to take this to some of them and have them look at look at these models and reflect on what they're doing and how it compares to
Yeah,
this
take
thinking.
a quick watch of Lawrence and the students' session from last week on the YouTube list, and
Okay, is that
you'll
the
see how they
first?
use the iceberg.
Is this the first YouTube shared video here from?
Yes,
Okay, great.
exactly.
Thanks.
Anybody else? Somebody move the compass. Tell us about it. Or they just quietly moved it.
I moved the compass. And I totally agree with Lori and like what you said, Mike. With all of these different models and these different tools, it is not that like linear thinking. It's like the interconnectedness of them. But just like when you were in the class on Wednesday, using the compass is kind of like a good starting point for why is it happening and thinking about those different systems instead of just like one little cause and effect.
Mm. So, and it was amazing to watch. How old are the students? 10, 11?
Yeah.
Yeah. It was amazing to see how quickly they grasped the use or the interconnectedness of it all. There were some pings that was like, yep, nope, they got it. They just had a penny drop. And then there were other kids in the class that were, I like cats.
Yeah.
And it's like, as a teacher, right? That's what you're constantly doing. You're like, okay, wait, they made that understanding conceptual connection. They didn't. I'm going to follow up with this. And I want to congratulate you, Chris, as I watched you kind of looking and observing and going, okay, I'm going to follow up with that. And we're going to do this. And so, all right. And I don't want to belabor this, but the idea here is all these tools in the toolbox. Does anybody want to tell us about any others? Because they may or may not already be in your toolbox. But what I would suggest and what we're going to do for student leadership, which is now Changemakers have a robust toolbox. What tool do they pull out? The tool they need for the job. And most of the time, as they build their toolbox deeper, they just conceptually and their complexity thinking just goes deeper and deeper. And ultimately, they find better leverage points for change. That's the goal. So, this one here, is anybody seen them or used the MISO method from Kathy Berger Kay? I love it. I love it. It's media, interview, observation, and survey. It's super cool. You do the compass to see what you think you already know about a situation and the system's conditions. And then the students go out and search what's in the media. They go interview experts. They have observations of past and current events. They make surveys to see what the stakeholders are doing. And then they have a whole bunch more information to populate the system's conditions. If you want more about the sequence of the tools, that is that's this that we shared with you in that blog of going from complexity to action. And I detail the tools, and if I were going to start from scratch, where would I go and what would I use? And be careful, because there is so many rabbit holes in that blog. If you read the blog in its entirety, it will give you a pathway. But I'm here to tell you there are multiple pathways. There are multiple processes. There are multiple tools. These are a bunch of the tools that Compass Education works with people to help them understand. So if you're not sure what Gilman's equation is and how you might use it, take a Compass course. It's super helpful. Love it. If you're going to make a change, the perceived value of the new idea minus the perceived value of the old way must be greater than the perceived cost of the change. Why do you think student leaders get frustrated when they go to implement something and then they come back to you? They're like, nobody did it. Nobody came. Well, what are you trying to change? Are you trying to change a system? Are you changing the way people think? Because really, those are the only two things you can change. Bottom of the iceberg. So from my standpoint, what concepts do I need to dig into more? This is a question for you. Where are you on your conceptual understanding of these things? What process will you use to kind of solidify it? What's already in the toolbox to do it? And what do I need to add to the toolbox? And how might I do that? For me, in working with Compass, what I love is it's micro to macro. So when I look at it, the micro to macro really does go, okay, you can learn an individual tool. The tool fills the toolbox. so that you just get better at a whole bunch of different things. And you choose a process to which you use those tools to guide you through. This is a whole school self-assessment. That's macro, but it's based on the micro of the same systems conditions. So you go from micro to macro. Student leadership. I'm gonna go back to where we started here. The Sustainability Chameleon. What are we all aiming to do? We just want to make a better future. And we want our students to make a better future because in doing so, super authentic, amazing deep learning, engaging, and they're actually doing something meaningful, which is ultimately what we want them doing every day. So FIS student leadership, now changing into Chameleon FIS Changemaker. It'll probably stay at Changemaker, but it's really sustainability. That's my story.
Thank you so much, Mike, for sharing about FIS and the whole evolution of student leadership to Changemakers. I'd like to open it up now for about another 15 minutes of questions and perhaps other examples or experiences you have helping students develop their leadership and their Changemaker toolbox. So maybe starting with questions, what else do you wonder?
Can I just follow up with Mike's comment? Mike, I love the comment, the survey tool and whatnot. Yes, the MISO method. If you want the link to the MISO method or anything, all those things are linked on my blog. So you can go to the blog and it talks about all those things. Also, super great resource is the Compass Education website itself, because it not only has the tools described, but it also has how teachers have used it for all different age students and how they've used different tools and methods. And there's great stories in there that you can just go and say, hey, that grade 4 teacher did this. I'm going to try the same thing. No need to reinvent the wheel here. What else is on your mind? When is the next Compass course? Love that question.
So I'll highlight that a bit more in a few minutes, but it's April 12th to May 30th online. We're on pause with in-person programs at the moment, but I'll highlight a couple more opportunities after we finish our chat.
One of the things maybe to mention about this student leadership is what project group 2 is so excited. Remember, we have 3 project groups plus the grade 4s and 5s who are on a different path of change making. So just to give you context, the grade 4s and 5s, they do mini leadership modules of like 10, 15 minutes. So I did one on what is leadership and management. And on Tuesday, I'm doing one with them. How do you organize a group of people? Like skills, right? We're building skills. And then they go out and try it. For the 6 to 11, they have 3 project groups. Project group number 2 is they are sourcing amazing changemaker workshops from around the world that in their mind, they are going to run for our own students. So they're going to take them and or create and adapt them and then run them for our community. And guess where else they are going to run them? Changemaker 2022 next March. So it's the plan kind of has those steps. Of course, they're going to run a bunch of them on Compass tools. They'll run a iceberg session. They'll run a Compass session. You know, they've partnered with some other organizations around the world who do great leadership stuff, because why not take the best from everybody? And then their FIS Changemaker program is basically going to be, hey, you could take, there's going to be 15 different Changemaker modules. Some of them are synchronous, some of them are asynchronous, some of them are in person, some of them are online. That's their goal. They're just at launch phase. They get 3 examples in March. So they've got one called Building a Changemaker Profile. What is a changemaker? They've got another one that is Finding Root Causes. And they've got another one on systems, using systems thinking and complexity. Guess who's running that one? Me.
Mike, we have a question from Mike on, could you say a little bit more about your Sustainability Council and if it's staff, students, or both?
Yeah, I only just got introduced to them. It was a multi-stakeholder group, and I just went in and listened for the first meeting that I was on, and it wasn't even a full stakeholder meeting. It's really been COVID paused. But I looked at a presentation that they did before I was here. They sent me the presentation, and it is set up for success because you can see the system's conditions. They use the SDGs. The SDGs is just a global framework for the compass. Like the compass and the SDGs, if you want, I could share with you how we put the SDGs on the compass. It's just it's a beautiful overlay. So they're already set up for it. And one thing that I noticed, Mike, was that the school doesn't have a common language around sustainability or a framework or tools to tackle it. So I feel that's going to be my role. And right now I'm just listening. And I drip fed a little bit in the last meeting, and they were interested. They're like, wait, no, I hadn't heard this before. So that's where we're at. So yes, it will be a multi-stakeholder group. It will have students, board members, parents, teachers, ideally. But if people truly understand the concept of sustainability, they'll understand that everything falls under that umbrella, right? Like your service learning groups are a part of sustainability, and your student councils are a part of sustainability, and your athletic council, or, you know, we got to get there first. If we can get there to that understanding, then it will truly be an overarching multi-stakeholder group, which would be fun.
Great, thank you.
Welcome. Kate. Oh yeah, the Acamus model.
Right?
I loved it. You can see it. You can see I learned from that, and this seems very similar, doesn't it? So what we did, what Kate is referring to, is Acamus is the Chinese and Mongolian International School organization. And back when we had conferences, remember those days? There was a teacher conference, and there were 600-700 people, Kate, I think, 600-700 teachers. And they contacted me and they said to me, hey, can you do a keynote for the conference? And I said, no. And they said, what? I said, well, what are you looking for? What do you want to learn? And they're like, well, we're looking for student leadership, and we're looking for sustainability, and we want systems thinking. And I said, okay, perfect. Why do you want me to do a keynote? Why don't we have students run the workshops? And they were like, what? So I said, okay, here's our proposal. Give us 40 students from your school, the school that was hosting in Nanjing. Give us 40 students for 3-4 months online. Make sure it's not the students that do everything else. Get your under the radar students who have high potential, who this will be an opportunity that they'll gobble up. So identified the 40 students, started to work with them online. We had a student consultant for Compass work with them, Cayman, who, by the way, when he went to his global school, became in charge of systems, sustainability, and education for the whole school. He interacted with them online, drip-fed videos, conversations about conceptual understanding of sustainability and whatnot, and then we hit the ground for 2 days. And we taught them some systems games and facilitations to do in a 3-hour workshop. So what happened was Acamus opened. I did a TED Talky, inspirationally 10-minute thing. And then those 40 students in pairs of 2 ran 23-hour sessions on systems, sustainability, and creating a better future. It was amazing. They can totally do it. And they picked it up like that. And teachers walked out of that session and go, how long have you been training those kids? 2 days. It's powerful stuff. Great example. Appreciate that, Kate, for prompting that.
Can you share something connected to the Amoeba? That's the one I'm least familiar with.
Yeah, the Amoeba. So I love the Amoeba as a game. So in your toolbox, you've got games, tools, stories, like those all are inside your toolbox, right? And the Amoeba I classify it as a game. So you play the Amoeba. And when you play the Amoeba, it helps you understand who's in your organization. Like, and when you first look at an amoeba, the whole concept behind it is, you know how an amoeba eats, right? Well, technically, I don't know, scientists, do we call it eating, consuming? Right? I'll turn to Kate on this one and Nicole. Basically, it engulfs, right? And so whatever it is that you're trying to make the change for in your organization or with your service learning group or whatever it is, you want it to be engulfed by all the people that surround. But what the amoeba does is it specifically helps you understand who is where on the change. So you've got your curmudgeons who are like, oh, there's always change going on and blah, blah, yeah, I've seen this before, blah, blah, people, right? And then you've got your other people who are like, yeah, I'll get on board with anything, right? And everything in between. And so what the amoeba does, it very specifically helps you strategically know who is where to move the change forward. It's super powerful. I can try and explain it, but like conceptual learning, you got to live it. You got to give it a go and or be with a facilitator who walks you through it and see it. But it's, yeah, it's a super powerful tool. Thanks. There's the link in the chat. Super. I like the question about scaling to lower elementary school. Conference training for students sound fantastic, but is there a limit or is it just a different approach? Thank you. I'm so glad you brought that up. I first, when I got involved with systems thinking and Alan Atkinson and then Compass Education, I was always high schooly, middle school, right? So actually the application was fairly obvious until I started working with amazing people like the Kates and the people in the world who work with the younger, our younger students. And what I have found is that actually, it's so powerful with 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, because they are born with this thinking. And I hate to be so blunt, but our linear institutions set up in linear channels actually remove that natural connection for students. They have it. You just got to put it in front of them and watch them do it. If you go to the Compass Education website and you click on the resources and stories, you can actually say what age group you're looking for. So you can go by tool or age group or vice versa or whatever. Check out the stories for kindergarten. Anybody else on this call want to share in early years? Just a quick little, because I've seen it be so powerful.
I can quickly. Do you want me to go, Mike?
Yeah, go for it.
So when I got to Prom, which is an international school in Thailand, and I got to my classroom, the teacher before me had tools and they had Compass, like actual physical tools. So I knew it had been a powerful lesson for 4-year-olds before I started. And then the thing that I think makes it really powerful and the way we started as Compass Education was to use it as a school-wide system. So kids from 3 were starting to talk about, especially in the library with our librarian, Sarah Hanley, she started reading books to them. And there was a book called something Oliver Bright. And it was a story of how a young child in today's world lived and how he got his milk and how he went to the store and how he got to school. And there was a story about how his dad lived and how his grandpa lived. And we compassed the different ways of living and traveling. And we were looking at where we are in place and time. And sometimes with the Compass tools, people think they can only fit into a unit like sharing the planet or something that naturally leads to sustainability. But it can be a tool. And this is what Kathleen and I have done for one of the workshops, is just to look at how the Compass just can take thinking deeper. Like just when you're working with almost anything. So you can compass stories. In grade 2, we compassed the story of chocolate and how chocolate is made, to look at fair trade, to look at how it was used in society with Valentine's Day, and then to make connections. In grade 3, we used it for body systems. And so whatever you're learning, using different perspectives, like most schools have one of the skills is to justify or to analyze. And using the compass gets kids doing that at a very young age. And then if you talk to Kathleen, she'll talk about how it just becomes so automatic in her kids' thinking when they were going to, I think like an island off of Singapore, Malaysia. You know, the kids just started looking at wherever they were and started using the compass in their thinking. So when you use it over time with young children through the school system, through the ages, then they just internalize it, and it becomes completely 100% a natural way of thinking to look at the different perspectives.
And that's the key, right? Once people conceptually get it, the tools are in their head all the time. All right. And that's what you want. It's a way of being and a way of thinking. You know, the tools just help you get there. I will never forget the comment by one of our student consultants, Cayman, who said to me, he started when he was in grade 5, and he was running workshops in the next couple of years and just has taken it to all new levels. He said to me when he was in, I think it was 7th grade, he looks at me, he says, Mr. J, he goes, now that I see in systems and think in systems, I can't unsee or unthink systems. And I said, how do you feel about that, Cayman? And he goes, it can be overwhelming sometimes. But he said, actually, I understand the world and people a lot better. I was like, okay, that's why we're doing this. Yeah, no, great question.
I love that, Mike. And I think that's a great note to kind of help wrap us up because we're at our time limit for this chat today. So before I ask you to wrap up, Mike, I wanted to just share a couple of quick opportunities. And in relation to what Kate was just saying, one of those could help you dig deeper into primary years systems thinking tools. If you want to build your toolkit or you're looking to build your students and their ability to make change and you want to learn more about systems thinking, we have some upcoming opportunities like the level 1 course we have, which is really a facilitated 7-week online course about systems thinking, sustainability, some of the different tools that you might use, and a chance to exchange ideas with educators from around the world. I sent the link in chat to sign up for that, but our next cohort starts April 12th. And coming soon, later in March, I believe, we have 4 self-directed short courses, which are more if you want to just dig into something now and have a quick impact. They're not facilitated, they're not as in-depth. But if you want to think about investigating your community, like service learning or maybe place-based learning, if you want to think about working with primary age learners, you might check out the Young Systems Thinkers course. There's a course focused on the SDGs, which, as Mike mentioned, the Compass really complements. And then there's a course on social emotional learning and how Compass tools can help to build some of those social emotional competencies. So if you want to check any of those out, you are welcome to. But really, just thank you for joining us today. Mike, do you have any last words you want to say to help wrap us up?
Yeah, I just want to mention that in a lot of places, people get really passionate about this when they see the kind of work that students can do. And I want you to know from Compass Education, what often happens is people start their journey and dig in and they get better themselves, and then they themselves become trainers. And it's been a really great to scale it up around the world for people who are able to do that. And it's student trainers and adult trainers like you. So if this interests you, I mean, the possibilities are endless. Just reach out to any of us for what the next steps might be. I really appreciate you taking time on a Saturday.
Thank you everyone so much. Enjoy the rest of your days and see you again soon.